Alright, so this fight takes place on some conveyor belts.
Both bosses share a health pool, and they should be tanked together. One tank on each boss.
Periodically throughout the scrap, one boss will hop up onto the controls and start up the conveyor belts, causing some chaos to ensue. 30 seconds later, the boss will jump back down into the mix.
At the start of the fights, the conveyor belts won't be moving, and the bosses will just use their normal abilities.
Body Slam will cause the boss to jump at a raider, giving the raider a debuff to take 40% increased damage. Then, hopping back to the tank, and when the boss does this actually, the tank will get a debuff called Shattered Vertebrae, which increases damage taken. So essentially, when one boss jumps up on the platform, that boss's tank's debuff will drop off. Then the tank that doesn't have the debuff should taunt off the other tank who still does, so that that tank can then drop their debuff as well. A small amount of rain damage will be going out when this happens, and anyone near the target will also get debuffed, so you have to stay spread out when the bosses jump.
Crippling Suplex will target the two tanks and clap them together. Okay, the damage done by this ability is relative to the health pool of each tank, so mitigation needs to be used.
The bosses also have rage meters, which will increase as the health decreases, and will have some effects. It will increase their damage, it will reduce the time of disrupting roar, which hasn't been covered yet. Skullcracker will toss out more hammers, and lastly, the number of jumps from Body Slam will increase, so they will hop to multiple people.
Franzok has some unshared abilities from Hans'Gar, the first being Disrupting Roar, which will interrupt spellcasting when it goes off.
Skullcracker will toss out a hammer at a melee raider, dealing a bunch of damage to them.
So now we gotta go over the possible fun enhancements that will take place throughout the fight. But before we do that, let's glance over how the conveyor belt works, because this will be necessary to understanding the enhancements. There are 5 belts, each with a tiny ledge in between, dividing the belts. And each belt is divided into multiple sections.
So, when one boss jumps up, a few different things can happen. The first being searing plates, which we just called Pop-Tarts. The Pop-Tarts will come out on the door side of the room and move away towards the other side. If you touch a Pop-Tart, then you'll take a bunch of damage, so you need to be dodging them. The Pop-Tarts actually cover the little lip in between the two conveyor belts, so you need to totally clear and get off the conveyor belt, totally away from it, otherwise you'll still take damage from it. Pop-Tarts come out 30 seconds after the fight starts, and then every 3 minutes.
The other ability is Pulverize. This will cause sections of the conveyor belt to light up, and after a few seconds, crush and kill anyone standing there. This goes on for about 30 seconds and will be used after 1 minute and 50 seconds, and every 2 minutes and 10 seconds after. Both Pulverize and Pop-Tarts will be used when the belts begin moving the 3rd time, assuming the boss isn't dead yet.
Also, apparently standing too close to where the conveyor belts start and end will deal a bunch of damage to the raider, but I actually hopped up on one of these during one of the attempts we had, and I didn't take any damage, so I'm not sure if it's bugged or if I just didn't notice it was such a small amount of damage. But anyway, to recap over everything, tanks, 1 tank will be on each boss. Tank swap when 1 tank's Shattered Vertebrae drops off.
Tanks have to pop mitigation when Crippling Suplex is used.
Otherwise you get mucked.
Yeah.
Also try and move away from a melee when Body Slam is used so that they don't get the debuff.
And tanks tank the bosses close together for cleave abilities.
Now healers, a little bit of raid damage when the boss uses Body Slam.
There's going to be random damage thrown out from Skullcracker.
Tanks will be mucked by Crippling Suplex, so just be ready to quickly snap them back full.
Things are tricky when the conveyor belts start moving, so save anything that can help you during that part of the fight. And standing in between the ledges makes healing a bit easier. Just remember, watch out for the Pop-Tarts because they hang a little bit over the edge.
Yeah, I mean, I actually found that it's also a lot easier if you just try and stay as close to the door side of the room as possible. That way you can just quickly run with the conveyor belt to dodge Pop-Tarts and Pulverize. But things do get a bit harder as the fight progresses, so think ahead as to where you're going to be using your healing cooldowns.
Alright, and for the DPS, you just have to hit things very hard. This is my kind of fight.
Everyone just needs to remember that range should be spread when the Body Slam targets a raider, and melee should watch out for when the boss jumps back, although this is more on the tanks to pull them away.
Don't get hit by the environmental stuff when the belts are moving. Surviving is obviously your main concern in this phase.
We really just lusted at the start of the fight because it didn't really matter.
The fight gets a bit harder as it progresses, but you get into a rhythm, so it doesn't really seem too bad.
No, it's nothing over the top. I barely noticed it.
At the end of the fight, after you survive the Crippling Suplex, make sure to hit this tag team with the 619. Shout out to my boy Rey Mysterio.
Good luck, adventurer.